Well, boys, we sit here about 1 week before our 2020 annual Urban Young Leadership Summit, and I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I this is the 8th in a row, I believe.
Is it?
I think it's the 8th.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 13 was the first one.
There you go.
13 was the first one, and you know, this time as we sit here, we're at Brett's house, and it's feeling very fall.
Festive.
There you go. You guys like what I did at the last?
Yeah,
Yeah, right. If
job.
TC knows I took credit for that, I'll definitely.
Don't
get
worry.
an
Anybody
earful.
listening already
Hopefully
knows.
they're not recording this.
But we're just kind of hanging out, and you know, just to give context to this time, it's a super exciting time. We're going to talk a lot about today of where this event came from, what we do at this event, just to give a little insight of, you know, inside the walls, if you will. But what's interesting is this time, every single year, the pressure seems to mount where you are prepared, you've been working on it, you identified your year, you've identified what the relevant theme is going to be, you've delegated responsibilities, and now, of course, it seems like we have more help and more resources than we ever did before in regards to, you know, an event planner and so much help. But man, I don't know about you guys, but I feel the pressure. One week away, you're just like, gosh, every single year, when you're just preparing for the message you're going to give, or the things that we're going to review, you're finalizing the fiscal year numbers in the end, and so I just wanted to check in and see how you guys are feeling. We're 1 week out.
Man, I feel the same way. I think it hit me yesterday, honestly. I think I was a little agitated yesterday, so anybody that I talked to, I apologize. You know, I went to Melbourne on Monday, and I was talking to everybody over there, and they were like, "Oh, summit in a week." And I was like, "What? Well, hold on a second. What are you talking about?" They're like, "Oh yeah, it's in a week." And I'm like, and then I had to count the days, and I was like, "Okay, well, technically it's 2 weeks, but I see where they're coming from." But it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I mean, I totally feel massive pressure. I probably feel more pressure for the stuff that I haven't remembered yet, or am I forgetting something, or because it just seems we've had experiences in the past where you know you're missing something, or there's always curveballs, right, when you're throwing any event. So those jitters and nerves, I guess, is it's a good thing, but they're definitely mounting.
Definitely jitters. It's interesting to me. I think about the summit, and I'm proud of the fact that the summit exists because we say culture is important, and culture is everything to us. And I think to myself, to be able to quantify that with the resources we put toward this is a very different undertaking than what I believe happens in corporate America. And I'm very proud that we've continued to dedicate the resources to it, the time to it. I listened to you, Taylor, talk about, you know, having more resources now than we did 8 years ago. Couldn't be a truer statement, but each year we've dedicated, as we've been able to, dedicated more resources to it because it continues to be the most important thing, like you call it, Brett, our Super Bowl. I'm just proud of that fact. It says a lot when you say culture is important. You want to wrap up one fiscal year. You want to launch into another fiscal year. You want everybody to understand where we've come from and where we're going. And as we've continued to grow, and the resources have continued to be poured in, it just feels good. Yeah, there's no shortage of nerves. There's no shortage of, and we do heavy prep, right? We do a lot of prep work. So
For sure.
It's building. It's building.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point. And obviously with COVID going on, right, we've had to pivot, you know, and there's been a lot of conversations, you know, but there was never a conversation of if we were going to have a summit. It's like breathing for us, right? We were going to have the summit no matter what the situation is. It's just how do we do it? So in years past, we've done, you know, big resorts and, you know, all these places.
Cruise.
That we've done a cruise before. Probably not the best environment.
Yeah, that would have been a good 2020.
Yeah, that one kind of was off the table.
Maybe
but,
2021.
yeah, it depends on how that goes. But
rekindle the Caribbean.
After a vaccine.
Right. We had to pivot, right? But there was never a question of like, are we going to have it? So this year we're doing some things that are different. You know, we're taking some precautions, and obviously we're creating an environment that's safe. But
scaled down version.
In a scaled down version that I guess that maybe we thought it was a scaled down version or what we know how to do, but
yeah, no scaled down message, just maybe maybe the scaled down digs. How's
yeah,
that?
maybe, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of this reflection. You know, people judge me. It's kind of like judge what somebody does, not necessarily what they say. You know, and I think as companies contract in this environment, and rightly so, you know, I always look at where they contract and what are you cutting, you know, and what are you willing to be skinny on and what are you bullish on. So I think over the next course of 6-8 months to a year, maybe longer than that, we'll see where the values of everybody's, you know, kind of sit. When the rubber meets the road and things get tough, you know, what's the first thing to go? And I think a lot of these events that bring people together for camaraderie and culture per se, and I hate to use that buzzword all the time, but I don't know another word for it, but I think you'll see people start cutting that. And it'll be a significant expense that you can mark off the line item, and you can have the excuse because it's just understood that just makes sense. But I think we've had conversations where it's a good idea to maybe challenge, okay, well, what we got to do something, right? We have to do something. So, you know, I hope we never lose that. And I think that's a challenge probably more to ourselves, you know, because there are definitely moments where you're challenged and you have an easy out maybe per se to get off the hook.
You talk about culture as a buzzword though. That's the thought that popped into my head. I feel like culture is a punchline in a lot of, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to other companies that are making cuts, but I just think that it's commonly used as a punchline.
Sure.
And I think that to us, it's a storyline. So
I think this year more than any other year, you're reminded, and that's within our theme that we'll get to this year. But you're reminded to ask yourself when you look at what COVID's done. You look at the challenge that businesses are facing and people making cuts that we've all referenced. Every single expense, you're challenged to go in and justify why you're spending that money. Sure. Is it worth it? Why is it important? And when I look at the summit and we say we're going to do a pared down version, it's why do we have this summit? And that's a good place to open up this dialogue, because you're challenged to say, do we have the summit so we can do really fun, cool things and go to really nice resorts and go on a cruise and create experiences? Well, that may be a part of it, but it's designed to do those things, to create experiences, to be able to receive a message in a way that is unique to that group of people.
Sure.
You know, you always say culture, as far as it's an experience that a group has together, right? Yep. And it's that experience that perpetuates a relationship that ultimately leads to more trust, that leads to effectiveness in the workplace or happiness in the workplace. I know that's what we hope for. So that's what I look about this summit is like the biggest challenge is like, get back to why you started this.
Mm. Yeah, is it do you have events because you want everybody to have a good time? And I think a lot of times that is the case. But that's certainly not why we did the summit. The summit tells a story. The summit reaffirms standards. The summit allows, it's almost as if the summit is the event that moves everybody forward together, that you couldn't do on your own, that only happens in an environment like that is extremely intentional, what we try to create.
Absolutely.
Right? So, yeah, it's a good point. It's like, why are you doing it? And if it was just for fun, well, that's easy to get rid of, right? And rightly so. If you're doing an event just for fun, especially in times when you're trying to make sure that you can keep people's job secure, I mean, it'd probably be irresponsible to do an event if it was just fun. But if it's the lifeblood of what you do, if it's the one time a year that's the opportunity to really make the biggest impact in people's lives, I feel like you have a responsibility that the show must go on.
And I think there's no shortage of fun. Clearly, we love having fun, but I think the powerful message to what you're saying is that those team members that have never been to a summit before, they're kind of like, what is this supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? How do I act? Sure. I think for the people that are attending their second summit, now they know. Now they understand there's an agenda. There's a goal. There's a common push. And the challenge I reference is there's a challenge to not be the same at the end of the next year that I was this year. Sure. Right? They're going to hear a lot of messaging that centers around, what are you doing to grow? What are you doing to improve? How are you challenging yourself to get outside of a comfort zone? What are you doing to expand your sight line on a particular role or task or direction of a department? Yeah. So I think it's especially fun for the person that's been to the first summit, because when you first go, you're like, oh, the company's taking us away somewhere. I mean, this is going to be great. We're going to, yeah. And while there's certainly that's embedded in it, I think for me, the people that are coming back for their second year, now they know, and I think those are the most buckled in people.
That's great. Yeah, completely different context, if you will, or
yep.
To receive the information differently.
Yeah, it's what you said too. It's a great finish line. We end our fiscal year on September 30th every year. How we track it, and all of our objective metrics, growth, profitability, you name it. Anything you track as a business ends on September 30th. And the summit has always been, except for maybe 1 year in October. And that's because it's a great start and finish line. And so everyone that has their goals for the year personally, that they all look different within our walls, or we have our goals as a company, it's a way to get away and see how we did, take inventory, and then to see where we're going. So I think that that's a really cool thing, that as we have grown and progressed, all the different kind of mini stories within the stories, you think about Tori within our office, who had a production goal that like literally was down to the last day, and he had an exceptional year, but he's able to now have a finish line and then take inventory and now start anew. And you hope that when you leave that summit, you come out with just that zest, that energy, that understanding of yourself and what you value, but also what the company values, so you can then run with better clarity for that following year. And I think that's a cool way to do it. I mean, because a lot of times we get so busy, we're all wrapped up in what we're doing. And do you take the time to really understand, one, why you're doing it, why it matters to the big picture, what happened this last 12 months, objectively, how did we do, subjectively, how did we do, and then how does that play into where we're going next? And so I think the summit is a really cool start and finish line.
And for me, it's also too, when you're putting on the events, you get wrapped up in it. You're putting on the events for others, right? Hell, I need the summit, man. Yeah. I need the summit. I don't know about you guys, but I am not immune to the burnout. I am not immune to the monotonous. I am not immune to getting my butt kicked on a daily basis. So, to your point, like, it's not enough to just have this global reason for why you're doing stuff. And if you have clarity on that, good. A lot of people don't have clarity on that. But even if you have clarity on that, so much happens during the year, and life changes, and your situations change, and you have situations that come up, and your experience are different. That, like, 1 year I'm super pumped and I'm excited, and then there's other years that I feel, like I'm having to throw coal in the fire every morning. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're on fire and sometimes you're not. And if you have an organization of, a good amount of people, they're not all going to be on the same page, right? We all go home at night. We all have different things on our plates. Some of us are having really good months, years, situations, relationships, and some of us are having some tough times. And to get everybody together and dive deep into self-discovery, personal development, who we are, who we want to be, strategies on how to have higher performance and create more for our lives, man, it just creates this cool connection with everybody. And the people who are doing really well in their lives, and the people that maybe are struggling, everybody borrows from each other. And it just has this weird way of connecting everybody, and it's super special, man. So I don't think it hit me until about a week ago that it's here. And so I agree with you. The pressure is mounting and I'm nervous. But I'm more nervous for logistics and stuff. But man, I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to come out and see Christmas before I'm supposed to. Like sneak and see if Santa's here.
I'm with you though. I'm with you on that front of needing a summit. And I just again that goes back to what I said out of the gate. makes me proud that culture matters to us, just like we want it to matter to everybody that's involved. And the reset, the closure of 1 year, the launching into a new year, what that clarity represents, and how that mission of uniting, coming together. There's the power in the live event. Power in the live event. Everybody needs them.
Yeah, and it's funny,
especially in an environment where everybody's been Zooming, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm like zoomed out.
Yeah, no kidding.
So we're gonna do it safe, but we love people. We're people. So another thing that makes me think about when you say that, right? You think about the origin of the summit. Well, hopefully we'll get to, and the origin of this company. I've always felt strongly that you want to create a place that you want to work in. You want to create an event that you would want to go to. And so it's cool that you guys can sit here and say that you need the summit as much as it's for other people. It's like, no, I think it's I think every year we want to put on an event that we're proud of, that we would want to be a part of. And I think that's where the pressure comes from.
So great.
I think every year, like I look at last year's summit and I'm like, damn,
how
do we adapt that?
Dude, that's so funny you say that. I literally, I don't know what it was. I woke up, I don't know if it was really late, but I woke up, and not like I didn't wake up with a nightmare or a panic, but I woke up just aware, thinking like, why do I feel like we have to top it every single year? Like that's probably a messed up belief that I have in my head, but you want to, because last year was pretty special.
But it's funny because that kind of drives the prep, that drives the intensity.
Isn't that interesting though? Because I know there's going to be value, either, and it doesn't necessarily have to be value that we bring. I mean, even though that's our goal is to bring value, and I think our goal is to bring more value each year. But I think about when you think about topping an event, I think the participation and seeing the light bulbs go off, and seeing people, as you put it a minute ago, how did you say, deeper dive? I think you said. To me, the pomp and circumstance, if you will, because this is in theory back to basics, right? We're not going to be at a fancy resort on the coast, overlooking the ocean. Right. We're going to still be in a pretty amazing spot, and to some of us, it may be even better than that flashy resort. But I just think to myself, I don't have that same thought that we got to top it each year.
Well, I'm going to borrow from that from you, because I'm not saying I'm not proud of it, but I do feel that pressure.
Well, I don't want to I don't want to misrepresent. I mean, from a value standpoint, I feel like as we grow and we become better as a partnership, and as a company, I think there's just more value that's going to be able. There's more possible value that could be delivered there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It's almost like the pressure, or maybe the value comes from creating the environment that allows others to contribute and bring back. Because like basically, you'd be narcissistic to think that you're the only one that can bring value to the summit.
Sure.
It's kind of like you building a company. You want to construct a vehicle that somebody can come thrive in, but it's like you want to create an environment that you can thrive in. But don't make no mistake, it's the people, it's the others, that their contribution, their conversations, their light bulbs, their notes are going to be what drives that.
I think they get that. That's why the second year summit attendee to me is really exciting, because I think they understand that they play a part.
What about the first year? What do we say to the first year?
I'll come back to that, because that's a great question. But I think the second year attendee realizes that this is not just Rod and Taylor and Brett standing up in the front of the room and telling you what we think.
Reporting numbers.
I think they understand that every department, and now there's department heads, there's a core leadership team. Everybody plays a role in the delivery of that value. So I think that the second year person comes in realizing that they have a voice, they've been empowered, they understand what Me Inc. is, and I know we may get there too in this podcast. But to the first year person, that's why it's so important to know how to attend a live event, right? That's why we do that training. How to attend a live event, how to show up, what to wear, what does showing up mean, what type of activity, and here we are in our 3 pillars, what type of activity is good activity at the summit, whether it's taking notes, whether it's seeking someone out that may have a little bit more experience or has done your job or is doing a job that you want to get to, that type of activity. and then ultimately we know we're there for personal development, which is why I really it makes me happy that you talked about the origin and how the summit is still as important to us as it is to put on. The first summit had 2 employees, and everybody else was owners or spouses.
Or spouses, yep.
Right? So is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe 3 employees.
No, it was 2.
No, it's 2.
2 employees.
Yeah.
So there were 3 owners with 3 spouses and 2 employees, and we did it in a living room setting just like this for 2 days. The format of the event 8 years later looks exactly like it did then. It's just that we've had some banquet rooms, we've had some stages, we've had some lighting, we've got some recording equipment. I mean, we've got more resources, but
I have a picture, by the way, I pulled up,
and Carson was what?
3?
8 years ago, he was 3 years old, running around, drawing on, well, he wasn't
We probably
drawing.
locked him in the back bedroom.
I saw a picture. It was Taylor won the Impact Award. We have a picture of us sitting in that living room.
Yes.
I think there was and everybody's sitting on the couch taking notes. There was no tables. Right? Everybody's just on the couch taking notes.
On their laps.
Yep. It's just, and you know what? It's funny how you look back on the situations and those are some of your most proud moments. It's easier once you've come through something to where you can look back and say, oh, I'm proud of that. But just beginning with the end in mind, and whether I just think about anybody that's brand new starting a company and they just started and they maybe have 1 or 2 employees, right? And I think it's so easy to say I'll do it when. But man, what you start gets perpetuated, and I know for a fact, if we would not have done the Leadership Summit when we did it, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation.
I so believe that. I remember when we were sitting, I can almost tell you when we were sitting around, the 3 of us, talking about the idea of putting one on. I vaguely can remember what those conversations felt like. And to your point, we probably wouldn't be here if we weren't able to have that history.
Yeah, I was going to say, but to that point, that's a really good piece of information for somebody that's listening that may have just started a business or thinking about starting a business. But I just remember feeling it was so weird for me, right? I'm thinking, guys, why don't we just, it's always the 3 of us. Okay, yeah, we have a couple team members, but this seems ridiculous.
I mean, it kind of was weird.
That we would have a leadership summit and we would coin it the Urban Young 2013 Annual Leadership Summit.
Well, how
Didn't
about,
it just feel like,
to your point though, how about you said it's not all about having fun? Maybe that was an excuse for us back then to just get away from the office. I mean, and have some fun together.
Honestly, respectfully, I actually don't agree with that because man, we put so much time and emphasis into each session.
The theme.
Into the theme, into the activities. I mean, we put just as much time and thought into that first one. Was it as polished? No. And did we have a great time? Of course. But
and I'm not saying there wasn't effort put toward the value. Maybe I misspoke or.
Well, no, I just think I just think maybe you don't give yourself enough credit that, you say you want to create a place that you want to come to work. And I think all of us share in a very unique experience prior to Urban Young that we knew that this was the essence of what we wanted for us to be a part of, right?
Creating the vehicle.
And to your point, Taylor, it was absolutely weird. I totally do not. That is so true. It was weird. I mean, you're sitting in a family room.
Whose turn is it to stand up?
Think about it. Who knows? This team member's been with you for 6 months. You
have an owner win the Impact Award, and you actually create an actual award rather than saying, "Hey, man, you had a great impact."
Absolutely.
That is such a true
We had
statement.
certificates made.
Yep.
And I think that was 2014. For all of our President's Clubs winners, which is a sales, not context, but it's a sales level achievement. Mm-hmm. And we had certificates that we signed.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's weird. I'm super proud of it, but at the time it really felt like, man, that's what it's so.
Isn't that crazy though? It's not so weird now, right?
It's not so weird because what you said of saying, well, when this happens, we'll do this. But will you, right? That's for anything in your life. Will you? Right. When the first of the year comes, I will start working on my physics. Well, will you?
And we're going to make an award, but owners can't win it, but you have one employee, so they pretty much win the award by default.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
and I do want to hit on, because you talked about that second year person. I'll talk my opinion on the first year person. You know, it's funny coming into your first summit. I think it's a blend of both of what you're just saying. You probably are thinking, wow, this is super cool. This is going to be super fun. This is a cool destination, a chance to get away. I think what maybe you lack in context is maybe how action-packed or how much value will come from the actual content and the slides and the presentation and everything like that. But at the same time, I think that's why we do stuff like this. We do a call that is the week before when it's summit week that, you know, makes it clear on, hey, how do you want to show up for the summit?
Sure.
You know, you show up with a notebook, you show up with a pencil or pen, you show up the right way, you show up before, you show up on time. But I think for that first person, you know, you're coming in and you're learning more about this company that you've made a decision to be a part of. And I think you're a sponge in a way. And then also you're learning about people, who these people are. And I think that that's a part of the summit that's completely underrated. And even to this day, as much prep and as much cool stuff as we'll do, as much fun as we'll have, and to me, it's just about getting to know people better. It's getting out of the office. That's why it's important that I think you get out of the office, even get out of the city that people are used to living in. Because there's something magical that it gives people permission to connect when they wouldn't connect.
So right.
For me to be able to reach across a department or a team that I may have very limited exposure, and maybe have a cocktail in my hand and be able to say, you know, how's your family? You know, where are you from? And that's one of the more underrated parts, I think, of the summit. And for that first person, I think it's so new and you don't know everyone, that have a blast getting to know everyone.
Something else you just said, Taylor, or something that you said reminded me of. When you're working your 9 to 5 and you plan for 2, 3, 4, 5 months to plan a family vacation or a vacation with you and your spouse, you're typically exhausted when you get to go on that vacation.
When you come back, you saying?
Well, no, vacation in general, you're typically exhausted because you've been grinding it out to get to the point of leaving for vacation. And you go on vacation to get rested. And we tell people, our philosophy on that is, you show up rested because you're going to leave exhausted, right? Because of what's going to happen.
Philosophy.
It's a philosophy, right? I mean, this is not going to be let's lay by the pool and you know and
drink Mai Tais.
Drink Mai Tais,
Which
right?
I might have a few Mai Tais. I don't even know what a Mai Tai is.
I don't
by the
either.
way.
What is a Mai Tai? It's rum.
Who knows?
No,
we
that's
should
a-
make one.
Maybe that's
It'll be perfect.
The summit.
I know where we can get one down there.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so
Well, it's,
But anyway, so showing up rested, leaving exhausted versus showing up exhausted, leaving rested, which
How
is
about
what
that?
a typical vacation is.
how about this too? You talk about the person in their second year. We talk about the person in their first year. You know, then you talk about the person. What about, we have somebody that's been there at all summits, so they're going into their 8th summit. And look, part of another philosophy is our structure doesn't change, and a lot of our message doesn't change. It's told in different ways, through different vantage points, through different timelines, through different lenses. But then you get somebody that's in their 8th summit, and you go, okay, have I seen this before? You know, is it, you know, they're going to do what was, then they're going to do what is, and then they're going to do what's next, and you know, there's going to be a killer videos and stuff like that. But then you go, okay, well, have I changed since year one? It has my perspective, my lens changed, and I think the answer should be yes. You know, every year that veteran is coming back to a summit, that they should see that information.
Well, I think that's where the fun conversation of learned knowledge versus activity knowledge comes in, right? The summit is a time to, you know, buckle in, you know, absorb yourselves in, like you said, in the content, in the information that's going to be shared. That's the classroom type setting. That's the learn setting, and then the activity knowledge setting is the whole year. You know, you're stuck in activity and you're doing it. So to your point, I think you go to your first summit, you realize what the summit is intended for, you go back and you hammer it for a year, you come back, even though the content and the format and the blueprint, the outline is the same, and even to your point, some of the language is the same. I think us included, that information hits us differently just because we've grown or we realize what phase of learning we're in.
Yeah, and like everything's the same blueprint and the same framework. When I go watch a basketball game, they put a ball in a hoop, right? It's the same rules. It's the same rules every time. It's the same outline, but the reality is the game is different. And, one thing we learned was leadership is consistent, right? It's the same message over and over again, but can you give a different perspective to tell that same story, to communicate that same message? And, so I feel like it's exactly that. Right, that is exactly the summit in its entirety. But then also too, like about getting out of your own city is about change of pattern, right? And I remember going to Tony Robbins, and and he would always talk about change of pattern, right? To change someone's behavior or a habit or something that there's a phobia that they have, he would always focus on changing pattern. And I look at the summit as when as soon as you step out of your backyard, it's a complete change of pattern, right? It's almost as if like, it's a bad example, but like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's like once you're in an environment, it's like all of a sudden I'm gonna have a conversation with this person and be vulnerable because I'm not in the office, right? I'm not in my comfortable space. So therefore it's just this weird shift of, we've had people, break down. We've had, there's a lot of tears. There's emotional moments. There's just people connect, and it's like there's this camaraderie that happens. And to your point, I know for a fact that if we were to do this in our office space, like we had this new Melbourne office, we built out this cool conference room, all this stuff. If we had our summit in the conference room, it would never be the same. It wouldn't even be close, right? There's something special about changing someone's pattern by going to a new geographical spot.
It's like, you ever been to a destination wedding? And at first, like with destination weddings, and
yours,
of course, I had a destination wedding.
that
So I
was a great wedding.
At first, you're like, man, like this is going to be expensive. As far as people that are attending, you're traveling, you're doing all the things. But then when you get there, if you've had a destination wedding experience, you're like, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Because people are outside of the realm. They don't have to go home and let their dog out, or they don't just show up at the wedding. They're eating brunch together, and they're doing all these things. And so I think that's very similar. It's this immersive experience that doesn't just allow you to go home and then come to the summit where you're taking notes and then go home again.
Forced to be more present.
You're with those people all day. You're, COVID's a little bit different, but you're usually rooming with somebody, right? Like it's this immersive experience that I think intentionally works well for us humans we get in these patterns. And when our surrounding dictates that we should be this way, but then in another setting, it gives us permission to be another way. So
yeah. Well, and now that you're bringing it up, it is interesting. It's like, how could you possibly create a potent environment where you're asking people to take all of their challenges, struggles, things that are on your mind all day, chores, bills, things to do, calendars, itinerary, and kids, and parents, and all these different things that we juggle on a daily basis that our minds are just always running. How can you ask somebody to put that down for a second if they're still in their environment? It's like when I come home, like if I come home and I go, I'm gonna work, like I have a hard time working at home because as soon as I walk in the door, I'm in house mode, right? I'm in home mode, I'm in parent mode, I'm in husband mode, right? But if I go to the office, it's as if for a little bit that stuff doesn't exist. Our environment is conducive to, kind of our patterns, if you will. So it is a perfect way to, maybe in the most simplistic way, to allow people to just kind of shut that down for a second, quiet that noise in hopes that maybe that they could receive some new information that might make an impact. But until they put that stuff down or until they shut that noise off, they're not going to be ready to receive the information, if that makes sense.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've never even considered having a summit in Orlando.
Well, we've considered it, but we've all agreed that is part of the experience, and we would ask better questions of how we have it elsewhere, whether that means, who do we know who has a place that we can go to, right? Like, rather than saying, let's have it at one of our houses, because that's by design. And one thing, too, when you're thinking about in preparation of the summit and where we are in this timeline, why is it themed? It seems like where does that theme develop? I know it's we've all kind of done a intentional job for the three of us to get away usually a couple months before the event to see, where are you at? Where's the team at? Where are we at as the business? But, it's funny, the theme each year, it's almost like once you start discussing it, it becomes very clear. So maybe you talk about the theme for this year and then past themes and kind of how your mind gravitates around.
I was actually thinking of asking you guys what your favorite theme has been. But I won't jump you. Go ahead.
Well, this year's back to basics, and I think it was super relevant to where we are. Just, I think we talk a lot about origins for us, just because maybe it's just good to stay rooted. I don't know. But the reality is we're at a very different stage of our business than it was, even 5 years ago, right? So, and I think, all three of us have had discussions about especially in the insurance industry, let's just call it what it is. If there's any insurance agents listen to this, especially in the insurance business, there is such a threat to getting comfortable. There is such a threat to status quo. There is such a threat to once your back is not up against the wall. There's such a threat to when actually people call you instead of you having to go knock on everybody's door, And it's such a threat to have a book of business, that, is there instead of having nothing. And I know that the three of us, we literally, that's like sends, shoots goosebumps down our spine because it's absolutely the enemy. And, we rebranded the company. We've grown. We had a significant acquisition that is going very well. We had another acquisition after that was really well. We've been lucky enough to bring on some significantly very talented key team members. We have some really good things that put us in a very different spot than it was 5-6 years ago. But that's the reason that I think it's so relevant today is if we can get ahead of potential roadblocks, if we can get ahead of things that could be threats, then we can avoid some significant pain. And I know the three of us have talked about going back to basics to realize and remember where we came from and remember who we are, because it would be easy for us to get sidetracked to think that, the newness and the sexiness of stuff that is today, it's supposed to be there to help us be successful, but can it be a distraction or make you soft, So, I'm excited about this year, and I think it's very relevant where we are. But to answer your point, if I was to say my favorite theme,
good question.
It's a great question, man. I honestly...
And why?
To the Universe was probably my favorite theme.
That was the first one.
What, because we almost lit a bunch of stuff on fire, or?
No, To the Universe was second year.
Right.
Sorry.
Because As a Man Thinketh was the first one?
That was the first one, but the To the Universe was my favorite. I love the fact... Let's take the logistics out of it, because we did so much more with less, and we created some incredible experiences, even for ourselves, right? But I think To the Universe was really special because for me, I think at that point in my life, I was battling some self-limiting beliefs. Probably like all of us were at that time. I mean, I still battle with that stuff today, but, and just the experience of, you craft this thing for quote unquote other people, and then you go through this experience of releasing this lantern metaphorically out into the universe and giving yourself permission to let go of something that's holding you. It just was a special moment for me, and I thought it was very relevant to not only where we sit, but for me personally, I think it was relevant to my situation. And maybe I think that's probably everybody. It just depends on where you are in your story as to which one maybe makes the most impact. But what about you?
I have I've asked the question because I've been thinking about it a lot. I actually think this is going to be my favorite theme, and I can tell you why. Prior to this theme, it was not without pain. Mm-hmm. It was not without pain. It was the idea that nothing worth pursuing is meant to come easy. Relationships, partnerships, businesses, teams. We've obviously shared, we've experienced our share of pain through all those things I've just named, which is why I think this year is going to wind up being my favorite. That was my favorite to this point, but what I like about Back to Basics is February will be 10 years old, and I think to myself, if that's going to be our driver moving into a new fiscal year, and we just do, our activity is going to look different because we're 10 years in. But if our philosophies go back to what drove us out of the gate, I think the next 10 years will be insane.
That's awesome. It's amazing.
Keeping things in their proper order and giving things the emphasis and the energy and the importance that they deserve, and not losing sight of the fact that where we came from is what made this special and continues to make it special. That's why I think Back to Basics will wind up being my favorite summit.
That's special.
Yeah,
man.
it's funny you say, gosh, that fires me up. But, one thing you mentioned specific to the insurance business is, man, we used to laugh at those older agencies that we felt like maybe we're lazy, maybe we're comfortable, maybe we're happy with what they built. And we came in as these uncivilized, hungry
hoodlums
people, and that was almost part of the chip on our shoulder as a company, is to say that's not our identity. But each year as it progresses, and whatever metric you want to use, but as you get bigger or whatever it may be, there's always just a little bit more of a threat to become closer to that. And so going back to the basics, or going back to basics, as Brett would correct me as we're off camera, would be the anti that. It would be to go back to that version of yourself that, had the back against the wall, that didn't have options, that wasn't pulling up to the Ritz-Carlton buffet where you can either have lobster, shrimp, or steak, or macaroni. It was just more pulling up to the Golden Corral, and half the buffet is shut down. You can either have fried chicken or black beans and rice. It's to me, that's what it speaks to.
Is that your spaghetti dinner reference right there?
Right.
Yes.
And yes,
there you go.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Don't go back to the dinners that we had once a month that weren't catered. That were we made pasta, and we made we drank Coors Light, and go back to that with the Back to Basics theme. It allows me, it's almost giving me permission to go back to that animal. And
yes,
and it fires me up. And I will say, if you're talking about my favorite theme, it's so funny how quickly it comes to you, because for me it's Me Inc. To me, the theme of Me Inc., based around Me Incorporated, I think that was a huge summit in regards to how we view team members, how we view our culture. And we would say now that we're a Me Inc. culture, and we've talked about what that means, and how typically innovation comes from the ground up, and everyone's the CEO of their own role in Me Incorporated, and they're in charge of taking ownership among which part that they're in charge of, or if you may. So I think Me Inc. was a huge summit for us, because that we knew that empowerment, Pete. That was kind of how we led, but it was almost like it was put a term, and Me Inc. is the term where we can always refer back to. This is what we mean by.
And that was a discovery of, I remember which was Todd Jones, right? And he went through a consulting workshop with the three of us about what our ecosystem was. Who were the stakeholders within the company, and how do you rank them? And through that discovery, obviously that now is an ecosystem we talk about all the time. And so there have been some significant relevancy that's come out of that summit. It's funny. That's
yeah, man. We talk about, is the customer always right? And although most times you're going to side with, sometimes they're not, and sometimes they're rude, sometimes they're disrespectful, sometimes they lie to you. So you can't. So we uncovered in that ecosystem that our team members were going to be our number one stakeholder. That if we invested and gave everything into training and development of those team members, that in turn those people would be able to serve customers way better than if otherwise. And that was a big aha moment.
Right. We decided that customer service should be a derivative of a good team member experience, not a team member experience should be a derivative from good customer service.
Sure.
We decided
Yeah.
that there are, not everybody, but to us that's backwards.
Yes.
And you know, it's just
I think about meeting too, and I love the fact that that's your favorite theme, because I'm reminded sitting here that the idea behind Me Inc. is if you were judging you, or if you were judging you on your performance in your role, you don't need me to tell you you're on track or off track, right? If you have the ownership over your role and you are truly operating within the Me Inc. intention of I'm the CEO of my role, no matter what it is, it just makes the policing of that role so much better. And ultimately, you set that standard. If we have to set that standard, we got a real problem, right? But if you're setting that standard as you would run your own company, then we've got a team of people that are all, skipping to the same beat. And I think from there, and we've experienced this, you see incredible things happen. I think I think Me Inc. is always just a great reminder.
That's cool that all three of us have that's cool we all three have different favorites, which is really cool, which I think it summarizes our partnership. We have a direction that matches, but all three of us have really unique, different personality types and leadership styles, and but same values, and it makes for a fun
and principally driven. I think there's a lot of similarities, right? I mean,
values.
Yeah,
values. And what about the part of the summit that I don't know. I go to all the fun stuff that we've done over the years, whether it be scavenger hunts in St. Augustine, or I remember we had dueling boats.
That was cool.
There was almost like I guess that was a scavenger hunt too, but on the water, and
via boat.
You had to go take pictures, and you had to take 5 people and try to make the logo, and you had people who are so creative in these experiences.
Those are fun photos.
That's a lot of the fun in the summit for me is. I enjoy the classroom time. I think it gives great perspective of where we are, where we sit, and where we're going. I think it's necessary. But man, I get fired up about the creative ways to kind of blend that message into a really good time.
For sure.
That's probably my favorite part is taking these moments when you'd just be hanging at the bar having a beer, but creating an immersive experience where you can tie back in the message. And you're just anchoring these principles. You're just anchoring these philosophies of, and even subconsciously, you're just continuing to let that simmer 3-4 hours after you just heard the message. You know what I mean?
You know why?
It's super fun, and I think that's what makes it more fun too.
Well, that it's interesting that you say that, because that goes back to my statement out of the gate about the value and why I don't feel compelled that we got to top it. Because I just feel like the more involvement, the more people realize that those moments for potential anchoring exist, and there's gonna be a bunch of them. I think they go to the classroom setting and go, okay, I'm locked in. But I just feel like we've gotten to a point. It doesn't take any pressure away from us, because we're still just committed and just driven to deliver just a bunch of value. But I just think that the more our team has kind of acclimated themselves, I mean, I just think the opportunities for the value, the event is going to do a lot of the work. The event is going to be the driver for people to give themselves permission to help someone that might not have had as many summits to understand that beer is the fun part, but it's what they're talking about.
Yes.
And it's the repeat of what they just came out of. It's like you get to a point where in the beginning we had to stand up and we had to be the message. We had to be the ones that we're delivering this value, and we hope you get it. I don't feel that worry anymore. Because I know our value is going to be, I know our content is going to be rich, but I also know that the veterans of the event
are going to
have a different eye line on it. They have a different optic, if you will, and now they're going to be able to just, I don't know.
It's a great point, because
that's why I feel that
after
way.
The event, everybody has these conversations, and you've got guys that have been here for 8 years.
Yep.
And they can give context.
And the anchoring that you talk about,
right.
It's just that's the word that just sparked it with me. It's like those 8-year, 7-year, 6-year veterans know that these are our opportunities.
One thing that you reminded me of too when you mentioned, and the event after the event is a philosophy we've always held to say that's where a lot of the magic happens. So sometimes it's the beers, it's the dinner after work that you talk about your best ideas for marketing or your best ideas for culture. And it's the same thing with the summit. Technically the event is in the classroom, but it's that break that you learn a little bit about somebody's story or you have an aha moment and you're thinking a different way. So that's cool. But what I also think about it as we get bigger and more people are at the summit, new people are at the summit, and we've talked about this before, but where do your conversations go? What are you talking about after the event? At the event, after the event, what are you talking about? Are you talking about things that maybe you learned today and that conversation continues? Because you can't cover it all in those classrooms. And I think that's what you're talking about with the veterans, right? Yeah. But I also think there's this almost baseline that I hope that our events are very uplifting. I won't even say positive, but because we're in the book we're reading is all about neutral thinking, right? But I'll just say uplifting. There's so much going on in the world that you can turn on a TV, you can turn on a radio, and you can be blasted by the world coming to an end.
Social media.
But this is a place that we hope is a safe place where people are respected and they're respectful, that they care for the person next to them, that hey, when I get a beer, I'm thinking about, do you need a beer? I'm not talking behind somebody's back. I'm lifting people up. There's the anti-gossip that we all fight as human beings, that's stuff I think about too going into the event, is get your mind right in a way that you can contribute socially rather than take away. And I think that's super important to me. And I always look for that. I always look for that conversation that I'm unexpecting. I'm always looking for that.
I think about what you're saying, and it just keeps giving me more clarity. It's like when the day one session is over, the session, we break. We're not done. We don't say to everybody, we'll see you tomorrow, right? We create the event after the event setting, right? And that's where these things happen. That's where these conversations happen. We come back for day two. When day two session ends, people don't just get in their cars and jet. There's a whole nother afternoon of the social time to seek out the
spouses, significant others.
Yeah,
families.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I'm just reminded of our early time together in the 2006 2007 range, where we learned the power of an event. We learned the impact of an event, but most importantly of a live event. But we learned the biggest value was the event after the event. Yeah.
And as we sit here and we could probably have this conversation for 2 days in a row and record the whole thing and have a blast doing it, but as we mentioned, the pressure's mounting and there's plenty of summits prep still to be done.
Yeah,
that's true.
So what would be one thing that you would say to somebody attending a summit or coming to this year's summit that you would look forward to? I think one thing is, as I asked the question that I'll answer first to give you guys a little more time to think, but I think you mentioned lowering of the guard, and I think that's a real thing, and I think the opportunity, you hope you can create experience that people can lower their guard quicker, and that vulnerability doesn't need to look the same, right? It doesn't need to look like tears. It doesn't need to look like anger. It doesn't need, it can look differently for everyone. Mm-hmm. But to come there with an open mind, to just learn and to just be, and that's what excites me, is where this, as people and as we get bigger and as we build a company, we're this messy mix of these beautiful different individuals that come from different backgrounds, different personalities. Some people love sports, some people never watch it. And it's just funny to me, as I hope that we gather as people and you can lower the guard and be able to get to know each other and receive some information and then continue to talk about it in the event after the event.
For me, I guess if I was going to do one takeaway or one thing I would hope, it would be for people to just exhale. Our team's been through a lot this year. So the ability to kind of just take a breath and really enjoy those 2 days, and and let go of maybe expectations, and just have a good time. Just have a good time, man. They've earned it. Lots happened, man, and the stuff that people have put up this year and have performed, man, they've earned it and they deserve it. And I know you say deserves. You don't like the word deserve, which I'd agree with that, but they've earned it. And I just hope that just a sigh of exhale would be great.
I like the exhale thought. I think I differ slightly only because I want people to leave just wasted.
Tired.
Wasted tired. I'm reminded of Tony Robbins, right? We showed up, we were sprite, we were excited, we left exhausted.
Yeah. Did a workout before, that was probably a mistake.
Right, did a workout before.
Never a mistake.
We were up until 2, 3 o'clock every morning. We were back locked in our seats at 7 a.m. We don't run that same sort of a schedule, but I think along those, and that was the most rich event I've ever been to. We were there together, arm in arm, and just eating up the information, becoming better. So the first thing I think about is exhale, but exhale the night before, in my opinion, because you're rested. You're give yourself permission next week when here we are filming this a week beforehand, but get some rest. Be ready on that morning to show up ready, sprite, and then seek out, as you work through the summit, seek out every opportunity that you have to talk to somebody that maybe you don't typically talk to. That would be my thought.
I love that.
Well,
dude.
I'm excited.
Super
Me
excited.
too, dudes.
So one quick question on the front of pressure. When does the pressure leave you? Is it when the Friday morning gun goes off? Is it when we get there ahead of the summit next week, get set up? Or is it Sunday when we pack up and we jet back to home? When does the pressure leave you? When do you, as the facilitator, us as the people that are carrying the pressure to put on a value-packed event, when does that subside a little bit? Because it never leaves us, I think.
If I'm being totally transparent, it's the moment when the three of us get back to our wherever we're staying Saturday day. And
I've seen that out of you too.
The official, make sure you have the cords, make sure you have this, don't forget this, all this stuff is done. And we get together and we high five each other and we hug each other. That's the exhale for me.
That's crazy because I've seen that out of you before.
Yeah, I think for me, Brett and I were kind of disagreeing the other day about this. I think once the event starts, I want to be there, right? I want to be at the event. I don't want to be thinking about what I'm going to present. Now, of course, that's natural. And up until the time that you're delivering a message, I think you have always the biggest challenge because you have the keynote, and that's always the last thing.
On Saturday.
So you have to stew about it. And, you have to kind of temper that. But for me, I would like to be as prepared as possible that when I get there, when we're engaged in a conversation, I'm thinking of not what I'm going to do next or not that slide or what I have to memorize. I'm thinking about that conversation. And so I think the better we prepare, the better traditionally we have prepared, we get more of that. Because you snap your fingers and that weekend's over. And as you mentioned, that's a threat where you go, okay, well, if the pressure is released when the event's over, bro, you just missed it.
Yep.
That's such a good perspective. And you both are really good at that. You guys I've had so many conversations with some of the team members about their favorite moments of the summit. I've been conversation with you after, so I can learn from that. You guys are both exceptionally good at that.
And I would agree with you. Thank you. I would agree with you. The minute we get there and we've gone through the prep of setting up and running through it as many times as we do, that when that opening video goes on, it's like,
that's great.
We're here. It can't be. It's only going to be a 10
Give me some of that juju, baby.
We'll give you some this year.
I love that.
That's also coming from a guy that didn't help set up last year. So take my perspective with a grain of salt.
You were there.
Forgive you.
I
were
was
there
physically.
We forgive you. I love you. That's
you were there, buddy.
Well, dudes, man, this is like always special, man. It's cool. I appreciate you guys making time. It's kind of cool that it was in the
really
house.
Cool, man, in your living room.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, I saw your little boy pop.
Did he?
In his PJs, and he's
awesome,
popping
man.
out here.
It's perfect. You got a baby background, all this good stuff. So, but hey, man, that's real. that's the life. That's us. So
Love it.
cool, guys. Until next week.
Until we ride.
Pressure's on.
Love it.